Welcome to Silent Queen's Reckoning. I'm so glad you could join us today. Now let's dive right into the story.
His mistress slapped me before 300 guests, and my husband warned me not to touch her. I returned 10 slaps. The sound cracked across the ballroom. Music stopped. A champagne glass slipped from a waiter's tray. Every face beneath the crystal chandeliers turned toward the center of the Ashford Crown Hotel, where Vivian stood with one cheek burning and a thin line of blood at the corner of her mouth. Madison's hand remained in the air for half a second. Her red nails flashed beneath the lights. She wore a silver gown, Vivian's diamond bracelet, and the satisfied smile of a woman who believed the most important man in the room had already chosen her. Alexander Ashford crossed the floor in 3 hard steps. He did not ask whether his wife was hurt. He caught Madison by the shoulders and pulled her behind him. "If you touch her," he warned Vivian, "we divorce tonight." The silence became heavier. Vivian looked at her husband. Alexander's face was tense, but not with shame. He was worried Vivian might embarrass him. For 12 years, he had praised her composure whenever it protected his reputation. Now, after his mistress struck her at the charity gala Vivian had funded, he expected that composure to save him again. Vivian slowly lifted a white napkin from the nearest table and pressed it to her lip. Madison peeked around Alexander's shoulder. Triumph brightened her eyes. Only minutes earlier, she had taken Vivian's assigned seat at the central table. When Vivian asked her to move, Madison laughed and announced that Alexander had promised her everything Vivian no longer deserved. Then she raised the bracelet on her wrist and called it proof. The bracelet had belonged to Vivian's mother. Vivian had asked for it back. Madison slapped her. Now Alexander stood between them as if the woman in silver needed protection from the wife bleeding into a napkin. "Did you hear me?" Alexander said. Vivian lowered the cloth. A red mark spread across her cheek, but her eyes were steady. "Perfectly." Alexander mistook the calm answer for surrender. His shoulders loosened. "Good, this event is important. Go upstairs, fix your face, and do not make a scene." Several guests looked down. Others raised their phones discreetly. The gala celebrated the 10th anniversary of the Ashford Children's Relief Fund. Alexander was scheduled to deliver the main speech. Cameras waited near the stage. Donors filled every table. He believed the room belonged to him. That was his first mistake. The ballroom stood inside the Ashford Crown Hotel, but the Ashford in its name did not come from Alexander. It came from Vivian's mother, Eleanor Ashford, who had built the first hotel with 30 rooms and expanded it into a national group. Alexander had married into the name, then spent years speaking as if he had created it. Vivian rarely corrected him in public. Tonight, that would change. She looked past Alexander toward the stage. The widescreen displayed his portrait beside the words vision, compassion, legacy. Madison's name appeared below as creative director of the gala. Vivian's appeared in smaller letters near the bottom. Madison had changed the program that morning. Alexander had approved it. The slap was not an accident caused by anger. It was the final move in a humiliation planned carefully enough to have assigned seating. Vivian folded the stained napkin once and placed it on the table. "You want a divorce?" she asked. Alexander glanced toward the cameras. "We will discuss that privately." "You just announced it to 300 people." His jaw tightened. "Do not test me." Vivian turned to Madison. The mistress lifted her chin and touched the diamond bracelet. She looked younger than Vivian, louder than Vivian, and completely certain that being defended by a married man made her powerful. "He chose me," Madison said. Vivian's cheek throbbed. She did not raise her hand. Instead, she reached for the microphone resting on the central table. Alexander stepped forward. "What are you doing?" Vivian switched it on. Her voice filled the ballroom. "Alexander has asked for a divorce." A wave of whispers moved across the room. Alexander's face drained. "Turn that off," Vivian continued. "He has also warned me not to touch Madison Cole after she struck me." Madison's smile faltered. Vivian looked at the 300 guests, then at the cameras, then at the enormous screen carrying Alexander's borrowed legacy. "I will respect his request," she said. "I will not touch her." Alexander exhaled. Then Vivian smiled. I will return the slap another way. She lifted one finger. 10 times. The ballroom doors closed. Security took position beside them. Alexander finally looked afraid. The first slap arrived before Alexander could reach the microphone. Vivian looked toward the head of hotel security and gave one small nod. 2 officers walked to Madison. They did not grab her. They did not speak loudly. One held out his hand for the black access card hanging from her silver clutch. Madison stared at him. "What is this?" The officer waited. Alexander stepped between them. "She is my guest." Vivian's voice remained on the ballroom speakers. "Her access was issued under my family account." Madison tightened her grip on the clutch. The card opened the hotel's presidential suite, private spa, executive elevator, rooftop lounge, and owner's floor. Madison had used it for 6 months. She posted photographs from rooms she called her second home. She told friends Alexander had given her permanent access. Alexander had given away something that was never his. "Return the card," Vivian said. Madison looked at Alexander. He held out his hand to the security officer. "I authorized it." The officer did not move. Vivian lifted one finger again. "You cannot authorize access to the owner's floor." The screen behind the stage changed. Alexander's portrait disappeared. In its place appeared a simple ownership page. Ashford Crown Hotel. Majority owner, Vivian Ashford. No complicated explanation. No list of companies. Just the hotel, Vivian's photograph, and one line every guest could understand. Madison turned toward the screen. Her face lost color. Alexander looked from the screen to Vivian. "Take that down." No one obeyed him. The officer held out his hand again. Madison finally dropped the access card into it. "This is humiliating," she whispered. Vivian touched the red mark on her cheek. That was the first. A murmur moved through the guests. Someone near the rear table began recording openly. Alexander saw the phone and forced a smile. "My wife is upset," he announced. "We should pause the program." Vivian looked toward the orchestra. The musicians remained seated. She looked toward the catering staff. They continued serving dinner. The event did not pause. Only Alexander's control did. The second slap waited on Madison's wrist. Vivian walked toward her, stopping 2 steps away. Madison immediately moved behind Alexander again. "She said she wouldn't touch me." "I won't." Vivian looked at the diamond bracelet. "Take it off." Madison covered it with her other hand. "Alexander gave it to me." "Alexander stole it from my mother's safe." The words traveled through the ballroom. Alexander's eyes flashed. "That is not true." Vivian turned toward the screen. A photograph appeared of Eleanor Ashford wearing the bracelet at the hotel's opening 27 years earlier. Beside, it was a recent security image showing Alexander entering the family archive room. Another image showed him leaving with a narrow velvet box. The guests did not need an expert. They saw the bracelet. They saw the box. They saw Alexander. Madison stared at him. "You said it was yours." "It was in the family collection." "My family," Vivian said. Alexander's confidence cracked. "We are married. That collection belongs to both of us." "No." "No." One word. The screen changed again. A short line appeared beneath the bracelet photograph. "Personal property of Eleanor Ashford, left to her daughter Vivian." Madison began working the clasp with trembling fingers. It caught. Her breathing quickened. The bracelet that had made her feel chosen now looked like stolen evidence under 300 pairs of eyes. Alexander reached to help her. Vivian raised a hand. He stopped. Madison finally freed the clasp and placed the bracelet on the table. Vivian lifted it with the same napkin that held the blood from her lip. She did not put it on. She handed it to security for safekeeping. "Second," Vivian said. Madison's bare wrist looked suddenly small. Alexander leaned close to Vivian. "End this now." She looked at him. "You asked for 10. I asked for a divorce. That is one of them." The third slap took Madison's job. For the past year, Madison had called herself creative director of the Ashford Children's Relief Fund. Her face appeared in promotional videos. She chose gowns, flowers, celebrity guests, and camera angles. She rarely visited the hospital programs the gala supported. Vivian had questioned the appointment. Alexander called her jealous. Now the screen displayed the evening's spending. Gold table decorations, imported perfume gifts, a private dressing suite, designer accommodations for Madison's friends, a 3-day limousine service listed as donor transport. The total appeared at the bottom, $840,000. Guests shifted in their chairs. Madison looked at the screen, then at Alexander. You approved the budget. Alexander lowered his voice. Stop talking. Vivian heard him. So did the microphone. The ballroom reacted with one sharp ripple of whispers. Madison's face hardened. You told me the fund could afford it. Vivian raised 3 fingers. The children's programs can afford medicine, transport, meals, and family rooms. They will not pay for your friends to drink champagne in my hotel. She looked toward the gala coordinator. The coordinator removed Madison's name from the program screen. Creative director vanished. Madison watched her title disappear in real time. Her place in the closing presentation vanished next. Her promotional portrait disappeared. Then her seat number changed from the central table to none. You cannot fire me in front of everyone, Madison said. You struck the chair of the fund during its anniversary gala. Madison looked around as if searching for someone willing to deny the obvious. No one moved. Third, Vivian said. Security did not escort Madison out yet. Vivian wanted her to see what came next. More importantly, Madison had entered the room believing Alexander's protection could overrule ownership, evidence, and 300 witnesses. Walking out too soon would let her preserve that belief. Alexander pulled Vivian toward the side of the stage, keeping his grip light enough to look private. You are destroying our name. Vivian removed his hand from her arm. My name. You think the guests care about technical ownership? They care that you stole from sick children to impress your mistress. His mouth tightened. I never touched the children's money. Vivian turned toward the screen. The 4th slap began. A photograph appeared of Alexander and Madison on a private yacht, then another at a ski resort, then a hotel suite in Paris. Each image came from Madison's public account. Beneath each photograph appeared the expense description Alexander had used. Donor meeting, hospital partnership, regional family outreach, emergency sponsor visit. The ballroom became completely silent. Alexander stared at the screen. Those are private financial records. They are charity card statements. His face changed. Madison stepped away from him. You said the company paid? Alexander turned. Madison, not now. She stared at the photographs. You told me every trip was covered by your executive account. Be quiet. The command came out too harshly. Madison flinched. Vivian watched the alliance split exactly where stolen luxury ended. She had not needed to question Madison for hours. She only needed to show the room what Alexander had purchased and what he called it. The fund treasurer rose from his table and walked toward the stage. He carried a sealed envelope. He said nothing. He placed it in front of Alexander. Alexander looked down. Vivian spoke into the microphone. Your charity spending privileges ended at 6 this evening. You cannot remove me from my own fund. The screen showed the fund's founding document. Founder, Eleanor Ashford. Current chair, Vivian Ashford. Honorary ambassador, Alexander Ashford. Honorary. The words seemed to shrink him beneath the chandeliers. Alexander had spent years introducing himself as the man behind the fund. He was never its owner, chair, or director. Vivian had allowed him to serve as its public face because cameras liked him and he once seemed sincere. That permission ended. His portrait disappeared from the fund page. 4th, Vivian said. Someone applauded. The sound came from a nurse's table near the back. One clap became several. Alexander looked toward them with fury he could not display safely. Vivian did not smile. She moved to the 5th. The 5th slap removed Alexander from the hotel stage. His main speech was scheduled for 9 o'clock. He had rehearsed it for weeks. The opening line praised sacrifice. The closing line described the Ashford name as a promise he carried for future generations. The screen displayed the speech title. Alexander straightened instinctively. Then a red line crossed through his name. The gala host walked to the stage, removed Alexander's printed speech from the podium, and handed it to Vivian. Alexander stepped forward. "I am still the keynote speaker." The host looked at Vivian. She shook her head. The host walked away without answering Alexander. That silence cut deeper than argument. Alexander was accustomed to people explaining themselves to him. Tonight, every person he treated as staff looked past him toward the actual authority. "You need me," he said to Vivian. The microphone carried the sentence. Several guests laughed. Not loudly. Enough. Vivian folded his speech once. "The hospital needs donors. The families need support. The staff need resources. None of them need a man who billed his mistress's vacation as outreach." She dropped the speech into a wastebasket beside the stage. Fifth. Alexander's face reddened. Madison stood several feet behind him. No title, no bracelet, no access card. Her silver gown still glittered, but everything that had made it look powerful had been removed. She looked toward the ballroom exit. Vivian noticed. "You may leave," she said. Madison lifted her chin. "I am staying with Alexander." Alexander did not turn toward her. The answer was visible in his body. Madison saw it too. For the first time that night, fear replaced arrogance in her face. She had struck a wife because Alexander promised the wife would soon be gone. Now Alexander's borrowed world was disappearing, and he was already calculating whether Madison had become too expensive to defend. The sixth slap waited upstairs. Vivian looked at the hotel manager. He placed a small envelope on the central table. Inside were 2 black room cards. Alexander recognized them. The presidential residence occupied the hotel's top floor. For 8 months, he had used it with Madison. He told Vivian the rooms were reserved for visiting investors. Madison kept gowns in the closets and cosmetics in the bathroom. She had ordered staff to replace Vivian's mother's photographs with modern art. The hotel manager held out a luggage receipt. "Your belongings have been packed," Vivian said. Madison's mouth opened. "You went through my room?" "My staff removed your property from my residence." "Alexander gave me that suite." Alexander cannot give away a room he does not own. The sentence had become a pattern. Seat. Bracelet. Title. Money. Stage. Suite. Every gift Alexander gave Madison came from Vivian's life. Madison looked at him. "Where are we staying tonight?" Alexander's eyes remained on Vivian. "This is still my marital residence." "No," Vivian said. "Our marital residence is the house on Lake Avenue. You moved your clothes out 3 months ago." The guests reacted again. Alexander had told friends Vivian forced him to sleep at the hotel because she was cold and controlling. The truth was simpler. He moved into the suite to live near Madison while keeping the family house available for formal dinners and photographs. The screen showed a message Alexander had sent the hotel manager. "Move my personal wardrobe to the presidential floor. Vivian rarely comes upstairs. Do not mention Madison on invoices." Alexander stared at his own words. Madison took 1 step away from him. The manager placed their packed luggage beside the ballroom doors. 2 suitcases for Madison, 4 for Alexander. 300 guests watched the bags arrive. "Sixth," Vivian said. Alexander looked at the luggage, then at the closed ballroom doors. He had entered as the night's most important man. He was leaving as a guest whose room had expired. Alexander did not leave. Pride kept him in the ballroom even after reason should have carried him out. He believed he could recover if he remained standing. A man who looks defeated becomes defeated. That was one of his favorite sayings. Vivian knew it. She also knew the 7th slap would take his chair. Not the ballroom chair. The company chair. Ashford Crown Hospitality employed 12,000 people across hotels, restaurants, and conference centers. Alexander served as executive chairman because Vivian appointed him 8 years earlier after her mother's death. He was charming with investors, decisive in meetings, and relentless when expanding the brand. He also believed appointment had become ownership. At 9:15, 12 members of the company board appeared on the ballroom screen through a live connection. They sat in the hotel's executive room 1 floor above. Alexander turned slowly toward the image. What is this? Vivian placed the microphone on the podium. A scheduled vote. At a gala? You scheduled the gala presentation to announce your new company plan. The board was already assembled. Alexander had planned to unveil a luxury lifestyle branch with Madison as its public director. He intended to use the charity anniversary to introduce her to investors under bright, respectable lighting. Vivian had learned of the plan 2 days earlier. She had changed one item on the agenda. The board secretary lifted a page. Alexander looked toward Vivian. You cannot remove me over an affair. This is not about the affair. The screen changed to one image. A company apartment transferred to Madison for $1. Then another, a marketing contract paying her 4 times the normal rate. Then another, hotel staff assigned to renovate her private home. No complicated explanation, no endless numbers, just assets leaving the company and arriving in Madison's hands. Madison stared at the screen. You said those were gifts from you. Alexander snapped. Stop saying that. She recoiled. Vivian looked at the board. The vote appeared one name at a time. Remove, remove, remove. Alexander stepped toward the screen as if physical closeness could change it. Remove, remove, abstain, remove. By the 7th vote, the result was final. Alexander Ashford was no longer executive chairman. The title disappeared beneath his photograph. His photograph disappeared next. The ballroom watched him become unemployed from the company he claimed to own. You built nothing without me, he said. Vivian's eyes stayed on him. Then it should collapse tomorrow. The screen switched to live images from the group's hotels. Front desks serving guests, kitchens preparing meals, housekeepers turning rooms, event teams arranging conferences. The company continued operating while Alexander stood powerless beneath a chandelier. It looks fine, Vivian said. Laughter spread through the ballroom. Alexander's hands curled into fists. 7th. Madison's face had gone blank. She no longer looked at Vivian. She watched Alexander the way a passenger watches a pilot admit the plane was borrowed. He turned to her at last. This happened because you hit her. The betrayal arrived quickly. Madison stared at him. You told me to put her in her place. Alexander froze. 300 guests heard. Vivian did not need to ask her to repeat it. Madison continued, anger replacing fear. You said she would never fight back. You said if I embarrassed her in public, she would sign whatever you put in front of her. Alexander moved toward her. You are upset. Stop. You gave me the bracelet this morning. You moved my name above hers. You told me to take her seat. Each sentence struck him harder than Vivian's evidence. The mistress he protected had become a witness. Alexander looked toward the cameras. Too late. The 8th slap had begun. Vivian lifted a sealed folder from beneath the podium. Alexander recognized it before she opened it. Divorce papers. His warning returned to the room. Touch her, and we divorce tonight. Vivian had not touched Madison. She had respected every word. You wanted a divorce, Vivian said. Alexander's expression shifted. I said that in anger. You said it as a threat. We are not ending 12 years over one scene. Madison laughed behind him. It was a broken, disbelieving sound. One scene? Alexander ignored her. He walked toward Vivian with both hands open, changing his posture for the cameras. We can deal with this privately. You have made your point. I have made 7. She placed the folder on the table. This is 8. A woman in a dark suit approached from the side of the ballroom and delivered the papers to Alexander. She said nothing beyond his name. No legal speech. No long explanation. Alexander refused to take them. The papers were placed on the table beside his luggage receipt. The image was simple enough for every guest to understand. No chair, no room, no charity title, no marriage. Alexander looked at Vivian as though she had violated something sacred. You prepared these before tonight? Yes. The honesty unsettled him. Then the slap had nothing to do with this. The slap showed me how far you expected my silence to stretch. Alexander's voice lowered. You planned to humiliate me. I plan to leave you quietly tomorrow morning. Vivian looked around the ballroom. You chose an audience. The guests shifted again. Alexander could not deny it. He had placed Madison at Vivian's table. He had given her the bracelet. He had changed the program. He had used the gala to introduce his mistress as a new public partner. Vivian's response was public because his attack was public. Madison stepped closer to the divorce papers. You told me she would never leave, she said. Alexander turned on her. You are the reason this exploded. You are the reason I was here. You slapped her. Because you told me she was nothing. The words landed in front of Vivian. Alexander glanced at his wife. For the first time that night, shame reached his face. Not enough. Not before pride. Madison misunderstood, he said. Madison's mouth fell open. Vivian almost admired the speed. An hour earlier, he threatened divorce to protect his mistress. Now he was preparing to call her confused, unstable, and alone. Madison understood, too. She pulled her phone from her clutch. Should I play the messages? Alexander's face changed instantly. Put that away. Madison stepped back. You said the company apartment would be mine. You said Vivian would sign the hotel shares after the gala. You said you would announce our engagement before Christmas. Whispers turned into open conversation. Vivian remained still. An engagement before divorce. Alexander had planned every future except the one where his wife read the documents first. Madison looked at Vivian. The arrogance was gone. I have the messages. Keep them, Vivian said. You may need them. No forgiveness. No alliance, just a fact. Alexander saw both women standing outside his control and lost the last of his public discipline. Neither of you would have anything without me. The room reacted with disbelief. Vivian looked at the hotel around them. Madison looked at the luggage by the door. Then they both looked at Alexander. He heard how ridiculous he sounded. Eighth, Vivian said. The ninth slap belonged to Madison. Vivian did not deliver it. Alexander did. He turned toward the mistress he had defended in front of 300 guests and began removing every promise he had made. The apartment was temporary. Madison stared at him. The contract was a trial arrangement. Her face tightened. There was never an engagement plan. She lifted her phone. I have photographs of the ring. A sample ring for the lifestyle campaign. The lie was weak and immediate. Madison's eyes filled, but she refused to cry. She looked down at her bare wrist where Vivian's bracelet had been. Then she looked toward the packed suitcases and the screen displaying Alexander's removal. Everything he had given her came from someone else. Even the future. You told me to slap her, Madison said. Alexander stepped closer. Keep your voice down. You said she needed to understand that the hotel had a new woman. You made your own choice. Madison flinched as if he had struck her. Vivian watched without satisfaction. Madison had humiliated her, stolen from her, and raised a hand against her. She would face consequences. But Alexander would not turn the woman he used into the only villain. Madison opened her messages. Alexander reached for the phone. She pulled it away. Security moved between them. This time, Alexander was the one being blocked. Madison connected her phone to the ballroom screen. One message appeared. Wear Eleanor's bracelet. Vivian needs to see who matters now. Alexander's name sat above it. Another appeared. Take her seat. If she complains, remind her I choose who stands beside me. Then the final message. If she touches you, I will divorce her in front of everyone. She will not risk the scene. 300 guests read it. Vivian did not have to defend herself. Alexander's plan stood on the screen in his own words. Madison looked at him. You knew she would not hit me back. Alexander said nothing. You wanted me to look cruel so you could look protective. Still nothing. Madison finally understood the role she had played. Alexander wanted Vivian publicly diminished, Madison publicly dependent, and himself publicly powerful. If Vivian remained silent, he won. If Vivian fought back physically, he still won. He would call her unstable, announce the divorce, and present Madison as the woman he rescued. Vivian had refused both roles. Madison removed the silver clutch from her shoulder and placed it on the table. Inside were the hotel cards, gift receipts, and a small jewelry box. She opened the box. An engagement ring glittered inside. Alexander's face went white. A sample? Madison asked. No one laughed this time. The cruelty had become too clear. Madison turned toward Vivian. I knew he was married. Vivian met her eyes. I knew you did not approve my position. I knew the bracelet might be yours. I wanted you humiliated because I thought that meant I had won. The confession was not an apology yet. It was responsibility. You hit me, Vivian said. Madison looked at the red mark still visible beneath Vivian's makeup. Yes, you will answer for that. Madison nodded. Alexander stepped forward. Do not act noble now. You started this. Madison turned. No, you started it. I joined you. That distinction mattered. She handed her phone to the fund treasurer. Every message is there. Alexander's ninth humiliation was complete. The woman he used to attack his wife had handed over the record of his plan. Vivian raised 9 fingers. Alexander looked toward the ballroom doors. They opened. For a moment, everyone expected him to leave. He did not. He looked at Vivian instead. What is the 10th? Vivian did not answer immediately. The red mark on her cheek had darkened. Her lip had stopped bleeding. The ballroom waited beneath the chandeliers, 300 guests holding their phones, glasses, and breath. Alexander stood with divorce papers on one side and packed luggage on the other. Madison stood without the bracelet, title, room card, or man she had trusted. 9 slaps had landed without Vivian raising her hand. The 10th was not ready yet. The 10th comes tomorrow, Vivian said. Alexander laughed, but relief flickered behind it. He believed another night gave him time to repair, threaten, bargain, or hide. Then this performance is over. The gala continues. Vivian turned toward the guests. Every dollar raised tonight will go directly to the children's programs. The luxury expenses have already been replaced from Alexander's frozen compensation. Applause began at the hospital tables and moved outward. Alexander's face tightened at the word frozen. Vivian continued. Dinner will be served. The family housing presentation will begin in 10 minutes. No child will lose support because 2 adults used charity as a stage. The applause grew. Alexander reached for the microphone. Security stepped between him and the podium. He looked at Vivian. You cannot freeze my money. The company withheld the unpaid bonus connected to the campaign you misused. Simple. Direct. No lecture. Alexander looked toward the board screen, but it had gone dark. The ballroom had moved on. That was worse than public attack. Staff resumed service. The orchestra began again. Guests returned to their tables. A doctor took the stage and spoke about the new family wing. Alexander remained standing in the center with no role. Madison picked up her clutch. Security approached her. Vivian had not forgotten the physical assault. Madison did not resist. She looked at Vivian once, lowered her eyes, and walked toward the ballroom doors beside the officers. Her suitcases followed. Alexander watched her go. He did not follow. Madison noticed. The doors closed behind her. Alexander turned toward Vivian. You see? She meant nothing. The sentence revealed him more completely than every screen. Only an hour earlier, he threatened his marriage to protect her. Now that Madison had lost value, he offered her meaninglessness as an apology. Vivian looked at him with open disgust. That is why you mean nothing to me now. Alexander's face went still. She walked to the central table and took the seat Madison had occupied. Staff removed Madison's place setting. A new card was placed before Vivian. Vivian Ashford. Chair, owner, host. No title referred to Alexander. He stood beside the table, waiting for someone to make space. No one did. At last, a security officer pointed toward the open doors. Alexander looked around the ballroom he had expected to command. Guests avoided his eyes. Former friends studied their plates. Investors spoke to Vivian's team. Hospital staff watched the stage. He left alone. Outside, rain had begun. His luggage waited under the hotel awning. Madison's car was already gone. The 10th slap arrived at 9 the next morning. Alexander had spent the night at a business hotel across town. He paid with his personal card because every Ashford Crown privilege had been removed. He called 6 board members. None answered. He called Madison. She blocked him. He called Vivian 31 times. She did not answer. At 9, Ashford Crown Hospitality held a staff broadcast. Alexander watched from his hotel room. Vivian stood in the main lobby of the Ashford Crown, the same red mark still visible on her cheek. She had not hidden it with heavy makeup. Behind her stood hotel employees, hospital partners, and department leaders. No grand entrance. No revenge speech. She announced 3 changes. First, every employee tied to the canceled lifestyle branch would keep a job. Second, every dollar Alexander and Madison had charged to charity would be restored. Third, the presidential residence would become temporary housing for families whose children were receiving emergency treatment nearby. Alexander sat forward. The suite. The room where he had hidden Madison, stored gifts, held private dinners, and planned Vivian's replacement would no longer belong to any executive. Its closets would hold family coats. Its private kitchen would prepare late meals for parents returning from the hospital. Its rooftop terrace would open to children during recovery events. Vivian looked directly into the camera. A room gains value from whom it protects, not from who believes they own it. The broadcast ended. That was the 10th slap. Not losing the suite. Watching Vivian turn his secret palace into something better. Alexander threw the hotel remote across the room. It struck the wall and broke. No one saw. No one applauded. His rage had finally become private, exactly where he had expected Vivian's pain to remain. At the Ashford Crown, staff began removing Madison's furniture from the presidential floor. Workers carried out silver lamps, mirrored tables, unopened perfume boxes, and portraits from her promotional shoots. They returned Eleanor Ashford's photographs to the walls. Vivian supervised only the first hour. Then she left for the hospital. The mark on her cheek drew glances, but no one asked unnecessary questions. Nurses had seen the gala videos. Families had too. Vivian did not discuss Alexander in the pediatric wing. She reviewed room plans, meal schedules, and transport needs. The first family moved into the former presidential suite 3 days later. A 7-year-old girl named Lily arrived after emergency heart surgery. Her mother carried one bag. Her father still wore his work uniform. They stepped into the enormous living room and stopped, overwhelmed. The girl noticed the rooftop terrace first. Vivian handed her the key. Not a black executive access card. A simple blue card with a yellow sun printed on it. Lily held it like treasure. Alexander saw the photograph online that evening. The child stood on the terrace wrapped in a blanket while her parents smiled behind her. No mention of Alexander. No mention of scandal. The caption announced the new family residence. Comments praised Vivian. Alexander shut off his phone. The 10 slaps were complete. But his consequences were not. Madison appeared at Vivian's office 1 week later. She wore a black coat, flat shoes, and no jewelry. The silver-gowned woman from the gala seemed to have disappeared. A faint bruise of exhaustion rested beneath her eyes. Security asked whether Vivian wanted her removed. Vivian allowed her into the conference room, not because Madison deserved comfort, because unfinished evidence still existed. Madison placed a phone and a folder on the table. "These are the messages, receipts, and recordings," she said. Vivian did not touch them immediately. Madison sat with both hands in her lap. The confidence that once filled every silence was gone. She did not attempt small talk. "Why now?" Vivian asked. "Alexander says I stole from the fund." "You used the fund?" Madison nodded. "Yes." The answer was immediate. "He approved everything." I knew some expenses were wrong. I told myself rich people moved money differently. I told myself you had more than enough. Vivian looked at her. Madison swallowed. "That is not an excuse." "No. I thought if I became important enough, people would stop treating me like I was replaceable." "So you tried to replace someone else?" Madison lowered her eyes. She opened the folder. Inside were printed messages from Alexander. Instructions to move Vivian's name on the program. Instructions to use the family bracelet. Instructions to provoke Vivian before the cameras. He wrote that Vivian's greatest weakness was her refusal to look vulgar in public. Vivian read that line twice, not because it hurt, because it confirmed the design. Alexander had studied her dignity and turned it into a trap. Madison pushed the phone forward. "There is a recording from the night before the gala." Vivian played it. Alexander's voice filled the quiet conference room. He told Madison that Vivian would never fight. He promised the divorce threat would force her upstairs. He said once Vivian disappeared, Madison would stand beside him during the keynote speech. By morning, the press would describe Madison as his new partner and Vivian as the reclusive wife who skipped her own event. Madison's recorded voice asked whether the plan was cruel. Alexander laughed. He said Vivian was used to being invisible. The recording ended. Vivian placed the phone down. Madison looked at the red mark, now fading yellow near Vivian's cheekbone. "I am sorry I hit you." "You should be. I was angry because you asked for the bracelet. I knew it might be yours. I wanted you to react so he would choose me." Vivian leaned back. "He chose himself." Madison nodded. There was no need for more analysis. The facts sat between them. "Will you give this to the board?" Madison asked. "Yes." "And the fund?" "Yes." "Will you report the assault?" "Yes." Madison closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, she looked afraid but not surprised. "I understand." That mattered. She did not ask Vivian to protect her from the consequence of her own hand. At the door, Madison stopped. "He told me you had never done anything for the company." Vivian said nothing. Madison looked around the office at hotel plans, hospital reports, and photographs of staff. "I believed him because it made me feel better." Belief is a choice when the truth is standing in front of you. Madison left. Vivian handed the folder to her team. Then she returned to work. Alexander tried to fight the removal. He sent letters, called investors, and claimed Vivian acted in emotional revenge after discovering an affair. He expected people to become uncomfortable with a powerful woman who refused to soften her response. Instead, the gala video kept returning. Madison's slap. Alexander shielding her. "Touch her, and we divorce tonight." Vivian lifting 10 fingers. Then the messages appeared. "Wear Eleanor's bracelet. Take her seat. She will not risk a scene." Alexander's story collapsed beneath his own words. He requested a private meeting with Vivian at the Ashford Crown. She agreed to 15 minutes in the public lobby. No suite, no office, no closed door. Alexander arrived in a dark suit, carrying the folder of divorce papers. Cameras waited outside the hotel, but Vivian chose a seating area beyond their direct view. She did not need another performance. He sat opposite her. For several seconds, he said nothing. The lobby moved around them. Guests checked in. Bells rang softly. A family crossed toward the elevators carrying a child's medical bag. Alexander watched them. "That was my residence," he said. "It was a hotel suite. We chose the furniture together." "Madison chose the furniture." His jaw tightened. He placed the divorce papers on the table. "I will sign if you give me my company shares at full value and stop the fund complaint." Vivian looked at the folder. No? Then this becomes ugly. She touched the faint yellow mark on her cheek. It began ugly. Alexander leaned forward. I gave 12 years to this family. You took 12 years from it. I expanded the hotels. You were paid. I built the public image. You damaged it. Every answer was short. He had arrived prepared for an argument and found no open space to perform one. Madison set me up, he said. Your messages set you up. She edited them. Your voice is on the recording. Alexander looked away. The lobby elevator opened. Lily, the child staying in the former suite, emerged in a wheelchair with her parents. She wore a yellow hat and held the blue terrace card. She saw Vivian and waved. Vivian waved back. Alexander watched the family cross the lobby. You did that to punish me. I did it because the rooms were available. You wanted everyone to know. Know what? That you took everything. Vivian met his eyes. I took back what you borrowed. The distinction silenced him again. He looked older. Still handsome, still polished, but stripped of the rooms, titles, and staff that once framed him. Did you ever love me? He asked. Vivian did not hesitate. Yes. The answer surprised him. Then how can you do this? Because loving you did not make your actions harmless. Alexander looked down at the unsigned papers. If I sign, will you withdraw the public complaint? No. Will you help me return to the board later? No. Will you tell people I was a good husband before Madison? Vivian looked at him for a long moment. Madison did not create you. Alexander's face hardened. There he was again, the man beneath the apology. He signed, not because he accepted responsibility, because every other door had closed. The divorce became official 3 months later. Alexander left the Ashford name on his business cards until the company ordered him to stop representing himself as part of the hotel group. He moved into a rented apartment. He began consulting for small event firms that cared more about his contacts than his scandal. Madison accepted responsibility for the assault and repaid what she could from the false expenses. She lost her position and several luxury clients. She did not become Vivian's friend. She did not receive public forgiveness. She began working quietly for a small design studio and stayed away from charity stages. Vivian did not monitor either of them. The presidential family residence filled every month. Parents cooked midnight meals in the kitchen Madison once used for private parties. Children drew pictures on the terrace. Alexander's mirrored bar became a shelf for medicines and snacks. The bedroom where he hid gifts became a playroom. 6 months after the gala, Vivian hosted the first Bright Tomorrow dinner without him. 300 guests returned to the Ashford Crown Ballroom. The seating plan had changed. Hospital workers occupied the central tables. Families sat near the stage. Donors sat beside the people their gifts supported. No mistress wore a stolen bracelet. No honorary ambassador claimed the microphone. Vivian entered in a dark red gown. The mark on her cheek had vanished. Her mother's diamond bracelet rested on her wrist. Guests rose. Vivian did not make them wait through a long speech. She welcomed them, announced the year's results, and thanked the staff. Then the screen showed 10 images. Not Alexander's 10 humiliations. 10 families housed in the former presidential residence. 10 children receiving treatment. 10 sets of parents sleeping near the hospital instead of in cars. The final photograph showed Lily on the rooftop terrace holding the blue card. Applause filled the ballroom. Vivian looked at the stage where Alexander had planned to replace her. She felt no need to mention him. That was the final victory. He was no longer required for the story to make sense. After dinner, Vivian walked through the ballroom alone. Staff cleared plates. The orchestra packed instruments. Her mother's bracelet caught the low light. The central table stood empty. She remembered Madison's hand crossing the space between them. The sound. Alexander's warning. The stunned faces. For months, strangers praised Vivian for not striking back. They misunderstood. Vivian had struck back. She simply refused to reduce her power to the reach of one hand. One physical slap could redden a cheek. 10 clear consequences could return a life. Vivian switched off the ballroom lights and walked toward the lobby. The hotel doors opened for her, not because she was Alexander's wife, because she was Vivian Ashford. 1 year after the slap, Vivian stood in the family residence kitchen helping Lily decorate a cake. Lily was stronger now. Her yellow hat had been replaced by 2 short braids. She covered the cake in too many blue flowers and ignored every suggestion to leave empty space. Vivian approved. The former presidential suite no longer resembled Alexander and Madison's secret home. The silver furniture was gone. Warm sofas filled the living room. Children's drawings covered one wall. A schedule near the entrance listed hospital rides, meal deliveries, and rooftop play hours. No photograph of Vivian appeared anywhere. The room did not need to advertise who had saved it. Lily pushed the finished cake toward her parents. Frosting covered both hands. Everyone laughed. Vivian stepped onto the terrace while they cut slices. The city spread below. A year earlier, Madison had posed here wearing Vivian's bracelet. Alexander had photographed her against the skyline and promised the top floor would become their home after the divorce. The divorce happened. The promise did not. Children owned the skyline now. Vivian's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Alexander, I saw the anniversary report. You did well. She read it once and deleted it. No anger, no answer. Praise from the man who tried to erase her was not a prize. Inside, Lily called for Vivian to see the first slice. Vivian returned to the kitchen. The cake leaned to one side. It was perfect. The second anniversary gala used no portraits of executives. The main screen displayed children's artwork. The programs listed staff, hospital teams, and family services before donors. Every expense was printed in plain language. No one could hide perfume gifts under outreach or yacht trips under hospital meetings. Vivian had not created a colder institution. She had created a clearer one. Before guests arrived, the gala coordinator asked whether Vivian wanted extra security near the central table. No, Vivian said. Normal security is enough. She did not organize her future around fear of another Madison. The ballroom filled. At 8, Vivian noticed a young woman standing near the entrance with a nervous expression. She was a junior designer from Madison's new studio, delivering donated activity kits. The woman looked around as though expecting someone to judge her for her employer's past. Vivian thanked her for the boxes and directed them to the family room. Nothing more. Consequences did not need to spread to innocent people. During dinner, the fund announced another residence at a second hospital. Applause rose. Vivian remained seated among nurses rather than on the stage. A reporter later asked whether the 10 slaps had become her personal brand. Vivian's expression cooled. No, she said. A woman's worst public humiliation should not become the only thing people know about her. The reporter lowered the microphone. Vivian continued walking. That answer did not trend as widely as the gala confrontation. She preferred it. Her life had become larger than the moment someone hit her. Years later, people still occasionally sent Vivian the old video. Madison's hand. Alexander's warning. Vivian lifting 10 fingers. The clip lasted 22 seconds. It made the night look simple. A villain, a threat, a calm wife, a promise of revenge. The real work had taken longer. Protecting employees, restoring money, moving families into the suite, refusing to let Alexander blame Madison for every choice, refusing to let Madison's remorse erase responsibility, signing papers, sleeping alone, returning to the ballroom, building a life where neither of them remained important. One evening, Vivian watched the clip for the final time. She noticed something she had never seen before. At the edge of the frame, just after the slap, a hotel waitress had taken one step toward her. The young woman looked frightened but ready to help. Alexander reached Vivian first and blocked the path. Vivian paused the image. She remembered the waitress. Her name was Nora. She now managed guest services at the second family residence. Vivian sent her the frozen frame with one message. You moved toward me. I never thanked you. Nora replied a minute later, You looked like you had already decided to stand. Vivian smiled. Then she deleted the video. The event remained in official records. Evidence did not disappear. But she no longer needed to carry the clip in her own phone. She set the device down and walked into the hotel garden. Evening lights glowed along the path. Families ate dinner beneath white umbrellas. Children chased each other between tables. Staff moved through the garden without fear of an executive demanding private favors. Vivian touched the bracelet on her wrist. Her mother had worn it while opening the first hotel. Madison had worn it while trying to claim Vivian's place. Vivian now wore it without either memory controlling the moment. At the far end of the garden, Lily waved. Vivian waved back. The 10 slaps had once felt like revenge. Now they looked like steps. Access, property, position, money, stage, room, authority, marriage, truth, purpose. Each one returned something Alexander had borrowed and Madison had mistaken for his. The final return was Vivian herself. Alexander's first attempt to return to the Ashford crown came 4 days after he signed the divorce papers. He arrived at 7 in the morning with 6 former department heads and a camera crew. He wore a dark overcoat, carried a leather folder, and told the reporters outside that he was there to protect employees from an emotional takeover. Vivian watched from the lobby balcony. Alexander had chosen the early hour because fewer guests would witness a confrontation. He expected nervous staff, an empty lobby, and doors that still remembered him. Instead, the morning shift stood behind their desks with written instructions and new access cards. No one abandoned a post. No one rushed to welcome him. Alexander crossed the revolving door and walked toward the executive elevator. His card flashed red. He tried again. Red. The camera crew recorded both attempts. The lobby manager approached and pointed toward a meeting room near reception. Alexander ignored him and pressed the elevator button manually. Nothing happened. This building operated under my direction for 8 years, Alexander announced for the cameras. Vivian descended the staircase. And it opened 20 years before you arrived. Every camera turned. Alexander looked up. His prepared smile tightened. Vivian, this is an employee meeting. You no longer employ anyone here. The 6 department heads behind him shifted. 2 were not current employees either. The other 4 had attended because Alexander told them the board planned mass dismissals. Vivian reached the lobby floor and handed each current employee a 1-page staffing plan. No dismissals. No salary cuts. No hotel closure. The luxury branch Alexander created for Madison would be canceled, but every worker would receive another position. One department head read the page, then stepped away from Alexander. Another followed. Alexander looked over his shoulder. Do not fall for this. The employees kept reading. Vivian faced the camera crew. The hotel is open. Staff positions are protected. Alexander has no meeting scheduled. Alexander lifted his folder. I have evidence that she removed me without proper authority. He opened it. The first page was an old company chart showing him as executive chairman. Vivian looked toward the digital directory behind reception. The current chart appeared. Vivian Ashford, chair. Mason Reed, chief executive. Alexander's name did not appear. The reporters photographed the screen. Alexander flipped to another page. I still own executive shares. You own personal shares, Vivian said. They do not open elevators. A bellboy near the luggage desk lowered his face to hide a smile. Alexander heard. He walked toward Vivian. Security moved closer, but she raised one hand. She did not need a wall of men to make him look powerless. You are turning staff against me, he said. You brought cameras to frighten them. I came to save their jobs. One of the department heads held up the staffing page. Our jobs are safe. Alexander turned sharply. The man stopped speaking, but he did not lower the page. Vivian looked at the camera crew. You are welcome to film the new family residence. The invitation changed the entire scene. The cameras left Alexander. They followed Vivian toward the elevators. Alexander stood in the lobby while the crew he had invited entered with her. His old access card remained in his hand. He tried to follow. The lobby manager blocked the elevator and directed him toward the exit. No raised voice. No physical struggle. Alexander looked through the closing elevator doors at Vivian. She did not look back. On the top floor, the cameras filmed Lily drawing at a table near the windows. They filmed a father preparing breakfast while his wife rested after a night at the hospital. They filmed the terrace card, children's books, medicine shelf, and staff room. The report aired that evening. Alexander's failed access attempt lasted 6 seconds. The family residence received 4 minutes. Madison faced the assault complaint the following week. She entered the municipal hearing through a side door without Alexander. A plain navy dress replaced the silver gown. Her hair was tied back. She carried no jewelry and no statement for the cameras. Vivian arrived through the main entrance. She did not bring a crowd. Nora, the waitress who had stepped toward her after the slap, attended as a witness. The gala host provided the event video. The security officer delivered the stained napkin and medical photograph. The facts required little conversation. Madison struck Vivian. 300 people saw it. The video showed no threat from Vivian. Madison accepted responsibility. Alexander sent a written statement claiming Madison acted alone after becoming emotionally unstable. He described himself as a surprised witness who tried to prevent further violence. Madison read the statement in the hallway. Her face became still. She opened her phone and added one more recording to the evidence. Alexander's voice said, "If she refuses to give up the seat, make her move. I do not care how embarrassed she gets." The hearing officer played it once. No one needed an explanation. Madison received community service, mandatory counseling, and an order to stay away from Vivian's private events. She also agreed to pay the medical costs, though the amount was small compared with everything else she lost. Outside, reporters asked whether Vivian wanted a harsher punishment. "The consequences decided," she said. She kept walking. Madison emerged 10 minutes later. Alexander waited across the street in a black car. The moment he saw cameras, he drove away. Madison watched the car disappear. Then she approached the reporters. She did not cry. "I hit Vivian Ashford," she said. Alexander encouraged the confrontation, but the hand was mine. The statement lasted 9 seconds. It traveled farther than Alexander's 3-page denial. That afternoon, Madison reported to a family meal center for her first service shift. She washed trays, packed food boxes, and followed instructions from a supervisor who did not care about gala photographs. Vivian did not visit. She did not need to watch consequences happen for them to be real. Alexander, however, called the meal center and offered a donation if Madison's service records remained private. The supervisor refused. The call was recorded by the center's normal system. By evening, another headline appeared. Former hotel chairman attempts to manage Mistress's community service. Alexander blamed Vivian. Vivian had not made a single call. The fund review uncovered one final plan hidden inside Alexander's lifestyle campaign. He intended to sell the oldest Ashford hotel. The property stood near the railway station, smaller and less glamorous than the Grand. Eleanor Ashford had opened it with borrowed money and worked behind its front desk for 6 years. Alexander called it outdated. He planned to sell it to a developer, use the money for Madison's luxury branch, and announce the deal after the gala. Vivian learned of the plan from a hotel housekeeper. The woman found a presentation left inside Alexander's former office. She carried it to the manager rather than throwing it away. On the cover, the old hotel had been replaced by a rendering of silver apartments called Row Tower, Madison's surname. Alexander had promised her a building. The presentation reached Vivian that afternoon. She drove to the old hotel immediately. The lobby had worn wooden floors, brass keys behind the desk, and a narrow staircase her mother refused to replace because generations of wedding couples had taken photographs there. Staff members gathered near reception. Many believed the sale remained possible. Vivian placed Alexander's presentation on the counter. "The hotel is not being sold." Relief moved visibly through the room. She opened the first page and tore it in half. Then the second, then the third. No dramatic speech. By the time Alexander's silver tower reached the wastebasket, staff members were applauding. Vivian announced a renovation instead. The rooms would be repaired without erasing the old staircase. One floor would offer reduced rates to families visiting patients. The ballroom would reopen for local weddings and community events. The housekeeper who found the plan received the first restored brass key. Alexander heard about the announcement from the developer. He called Vivian while she stood behind the same front desk where her mother once worked. You cannot cancel that sale. There was no approved sale. I signed an agreement. You signed a proposal. The developer will sue. He already withdrew. Silence. The developer had believed Alexander controlled the company. Once shown the current ownership and board decision, he walked away rather than fight for a property never approved for sale. That hotel loses money, Alexander said. Not anymore. Vivian looked through the lobby windows. Residents from the neighborhood had begun entering after hearing the news. An elderly couple brought their wedding photograph taken on the staircase 43 years earlier. A local baker offered to supply the reopening. Alexander heard the voices. You are sentimental, he said. You are homeless, Vivian replied. Then she ended the call. It was the only cruel line she allowed herself that month. The staff behind the desk had heard it. No one pretended not to smile. Alexander's final public move came at the hotel group's annual investor meeting. Although removed as chairman, he still owned enough personal shares to attend. He entered the conference hall wearing a tailored gray suit and carrying no mistress, no camera crew, and no access card. Vivian sat at the front beside the new chief executive. The room held investors, hotel managers, and employee representatives. Screens showed occupancy, new family programs, restored charity funds, and renovation plans for the original hotel. Every number had improved since Alexander left. He read the report with a tight mouth. When questions opened, Alexander stood. These results depend on projects I started. The new chief executive displayed the project dates. Family residence, approved after Alexander's removal. Original hotel restoration, approved after Alexander's removal. Lifestyle branch losses, ended after Alexander's removal. Charity repayment, completed from Alexander's withheld bonus and asset recovery. The screen answered him line by line. Alexander remained standing. The Ashford brand became internationally recognized under my leadership. Vivian pressed one button. A timeline appeared. First Ashford Hotel, opened by Eleanor Ashford. Ashford Crown, opened before Alexander's marriage. Hospital Fund, founded before Alexander joined. International expansion, financed by Vivian's family shares. Alexander's years appeared as one section in the middle, not the beginning. He stared at the timeline. For years, he had spoken as if history started when he entered it. Are you trying to erase my contribution? He asked. Vivian answered from her seat. No, I am placing it at the correct size. Several investors looked down to hide reactions. Alexander changed direction. He proposed removing Vivian as chair, claiming the public scandal damaged confidence. The proposal required support. No one seconded it. The silence lasted 10 seconds. Alexander slowly sat. The meeting continued. Managers discussed renovations. Employee representatives presented retention numbers. A hospital director thanked the family residences. Alexander remained in the fourth row, unable to interrupt without making himself look smaller. At the end, shareholders voted to rename the children's program, Eleanor Ashford Family Haven. The name passed unanimously. Alexander abstained. His single abstention appeared on the screen beside hundreds of votes in favor. Vivian looked at her mother's name. She did not look at him. The restored First Hotel reopened 18 months after the gala. The brass keys shone behind the front desk. The wooden staircase remained. Local wedding photographs covered one wall. The top floor held simple family rooms connected to the nearby medical center. Vivian cut the ribbon with the housekeeper who found Alexander's sale plan. No celebrities attended. No mistress stood beside the entrance. No man borrowed the microphone. Residents filled the lobby. Former employees returned with photographs. A retired bellman brought the cap he wore on opening day. Children ran up the staircase until staff redirected them. Near the end of the ceremony, Vivian noticed Madison standing outside. She remained beyond the glass doors holding a portfolio. Her community service was complete. Her stay-away order applied only to Vivian's private events, and this reopening was public. Vivian could have asked security to remove her. She did not. Madison entered and stopped near the reception desk. "The studio designed the family room signs," she said. Vivian had approved the designs without knowing who drew them. They were simple, colorful, and practical. No silver glamour. No names in large letters. "They work well," Vivian said. Madison nodded. That was the entire conversation. No friendship. No dramatic forgiveness. Work judged on its own value, consequence left intact. Alexander did not attend. He sent a letter claiming the renovation used ideas from his original proposal. The proposal had called for demolition. No one answered. That evening, after the last guest left, Vivian climbed the old staircase alone. At the landing hung two photographs: Eleanor Ashford opening the hotel, Vivian Ashford reopening it. Between them stood 46 years of staff, guests, weddings, losses, repairs, and choices. Alexander occupied none of the wall. Vivian entered one of the new family rooms. A small boy slept beneath a blue blanket while his mother unpacked beside the bed. The father stood at the window looking toward the hospital. Vivian closed the door quietly. Downstairs, the housekeeper locked the brass front doors for the night. The hotel belonged to its purpose again. So did Vivian. Alexander's next plan targeted the hotel group's largest winter contract. The city planned a week-long medical conference requiring 2,000 rooms, transport, dining halls, and translation services. Alexander had negotiated the early proposal before his removal. He contacted the conference committee and claimed only he could deliver the event. He partnered with a rival hotel. For 3 weeks, he called former Ashford clients, offered lower rates, and warned that Vivian's family residences had weakened the Grand's luxury standards. He expected executives to choose polished promises over a hotel associated with sick children. Vivian learned of the attempt from the conference chair. She did not attack Alexander publicly. She invited the committee to inspect both properties. Alexander prepared the rival hotel like a stage. New flowers filled the lobby. Temporary staff wore matching uniforms. Madison's old silver style appeared in the conference lounge. The inspection began well. Then the committee asked to see the accessible rooms. Only 4 were ready. They asked about hospital transport. Alexander had no vehicles. They asked where families could stay during medical emergencies. He pointed toward a standard waiting area with 6 chairs. At the Ashford Crown, the committee found 40 accessible rooms, trained transport staff, translation desks, the presidential family residence, and direct hospital support. Vivian walked them through the spaces without mentioning Alexander. The committee awarded Ashford the contract. Alexander heard the result while standing in the rival hotel's temporary silver lounge. The owner ended their partnership that afternoon. The decorations were removed before sunset. Madison's final evidence arrived in a storage box. While clearing her apartment, she found contracts Alexander had hidden behind promotional samples. One promised her 5% of the new lifestyle branch. Another promised a private floor in the original Ashford Hotel after redevelopment. A third carried Vivian's copied signature. Madison brought the box to the company board. The copied signature was obvious when placed beside Vivian's real one. Alexander had used it to move design money into Madison's project before approval. The board called him. He denied everything until the screen showed a message he sent Madison. "Vivian never reads the small pages. Sign her name and send it back." Alexander stopped speaking. The money was recovered from an account created for the canceled branch. Employees were paid first, suppliers were paid next. Nothing remained for Alexander or Madison. Madison accepted the loss. Alexander filed another complaint. It failed within a week. Vivian received the final report at her desk and signed one page closing the lifestyle project forever. She did not hold a press conference. The silver logo disappeared from the company system. The floor plans became family rooms. The remaining promotional gifts were sold, and the money purchased hospital transport vans. 3 black vans arrived at Haven House that spring. Children covered them with removable star stickers. The first van carried Lily to a follow-up appointment. Alexander's hidden contract had become a ride to the hospital. The 3rd anniversary gala was broadcast live. Alexander bought a ticket through another guest and entered the ballroom after dinner began. Security recognized him but allowed him to remain because the event was public and he had violated no current order. He chose a table near the rear. Vivian saw him and continued the program. The screen showed family residences, transport vans, the restored First Hotel, and the growing Children's Fund. Donations passed the previous record before the main course ended. During the closing segment, Alexander stood. "I founded these programs with my wife." His voice carried across the live broadcast. Guests turned. Vivian remained at the podium. Alexander walked into the aisle. "She erased my work because our marriage failed." The old accusation returned in a new suit. Vivian pressed one button. The screen divided into dates. The fund existed before Alexander joined. The hotel existed before the marriage. The residences opened after his removal. The vans came from recovered money he tried to divert. Each fact appeared in one line. Alexander looked up at the timeline. The live comments beside the broadcast moved rapidly. He changed direction. "I brought international attention." The screen showed the gala expense recovery. He said he created the lifestyle branch. The screen showed its loss. He said Vivian used the slap to steal his company. The original ownership page appeared. Vivian did not argue. She let the screen answer. Alexander stood in the aisle while every claim produced another record. At last, he looked toward the cameras and saw no path left. "You planned all of this," he said. Vivian looked at him. "You keep confusing records with traps." Security approached. Alexander raised both hands and walked out on his own. The broadcast stayed on Vivian. "Now," she said, "we will return to the children." The donation total rose again. 5 years after the slap, the Ashford Crown hosted its 50th family in the former presidential residence. The child was a 10-year-old boy waiting for a kidney transplant. He arrived with his grandmother and one small suitcase. The rooftop garden had grown around the terrace. Herbs filled wooden boxes. Children had painted stones along the path. Vivian handed him a blue access card. He asked whether famous people once stayed there. "Some people thought they were famous," Vivian said. The grandmother laughed. That evening, Vivian attended a staff dinner in the ballroom. 300 chairs filled the room again, but no reporters waited for scandal. Housekeepers, cooks, drivers, nurses, managers, and volunteers occupied every table. Nora now directed both family residences. The housekeeper from the First Hotel managed its community program. Lily, healthy and taller, helped distribute awards. Vivian sat among them. No central throne, no stolen seat. When staff surprised her with a short video, it did not show Madison's slap. It showed everything built afterward. The suite changing, the first family arriving, the old hotel reopening, vans covered in stars, children painting on the rooftop. The final frame contained 10 words. She did not strike back. She built something they could not. Vivian stood to applause. Her speech lasted less than a minute. "No one here is protected because I won a fight," she said. "They are protected because all of you kept working after the fight ended." She thanked them and sat. Later, she walked through the empty ballroom. The central floor no longer carried the memory of Madison's hand as sharply as before. Alexander lived in another state. Madison worked without public attention. Their names appeared only when old videos resurfaced. Vivian's name appeared on hotel doors, family rooms, staff scholarships, and hospital vans. Not because she demanded to be seen, because she stopped allowing others to use her invisibility. At the ballroom entrance, she found the old stained napkin sealed inside an evidence envelope. The legal retention period had ended. Staff asked whether she wanted it archived. Vivian looked at the faded red mark. No. No. The napkin was destroyed. The bracelet remained. The hotels remained. The families remained. Vivian stepped into the lobby where the night shift had begun. Doors opened. Guests arrived. Staff greeted them. Life continued without asking the worst moment to lead it. The first threat to the new family residence came from a hidden camera. A travel blogger entered the Ashford Crown pretending to visit a patient. He filmed tired parents eating breakfast, children returning from treatment, and medicine boxes inside private rooms. His video claimed Vivian had turned a luxury hotel into a depressing hospital ward. Alexander shared the video within minutes. He added one sentence: "This is what happens when revenge replaces business." Vivian did not argue online. She removed the blogger from the property, protected the families shown without permission, and invited 3 parents to decide whether any response should be made. They chose one. The hotel released a new video filmed with consent. It showed the private entrance, quiet bedrooms, rooftop garden, transport vans, and staff kitchen. Parents explained through written captions that the residents kept them close to their children. No crying interviews, no children forced to perform gratitude. The final screen showed the normal hotel lobby operating at full capacity beneath the residence. Bookings rose. Donations rose. The blogger deleted his video after the families demanded removal. Alexander left his post online. Comments beneath it filled with photographs from guests praising the hotel and families thanking the residents. His attempt to shame the project became free publicity for it. The next morning, Vivian approved a privacy wall around the rooftop garden. The wall carried no Ashford logo. Children painted it with clouds. Alexander tried to return through a children's charity of his own. He announced the Forward Family Foundation at a rented conference hall. The launch page used photographs from old Ashford events. Several showed Vivian's staff. One showed Lily from behind without permission. Alexander promised luxury recovery trips for sick children and invited former Ashford donors to a public dinner. Only 40 guests bought tickets. Vivian ignored the event until a hospital coordinator found that Alexander had promised rooms he did not control. Families received emails saying they would stay at Ashford Properties as part of his new program. Vivian sent every family a clear correction and offered direct assistance where needed. Then she removed the Ashford photographs from Alexander's website. At Alexander's launch dinner, the main screen went blank 10 minutes before his speech. The venue had received proof that he did not own the images. Alexander stood before 40 guests with no presentation. He announced the recovery trips anyway. A mother in the front row asked which hotels were confirmed. Alexander named none. Another asked which hospital supported the program. He gave no answer. The dinner ended early. The Forward Family Foundation closed 6 weeks later without hosting a single child. Remaining ticket money was refunded. Alexander blamed Vivian in a long statement. One former donor replied with the question everyone understood: "Why does your charity require her property?" Alexander never answered. Madison prevented the next scheme before it reached Vivian. Alexander contacted her studio under another name and requested designs for a campaign called The Silenced Founder. The materials described a visionary businessman removed by a jealous heiress after defending a younger employee from violence. Madison recognized the story immediately. The campaign included edited gala footage beginning after her slap. It showed Alexander standing between both women, then Vivian taking the microphone. Without the first seconds, Vivian appeared to attack him without cause. Madison saved the request and rejected the job. Then she sent the material to Vivian. Her message contained one line: "I helped him create the first lie. I will not help with the second." Vivian's team stopped the edited video before release. The platform removed the false campaign. The agency Alexander hired returned his deposit and ended the contract. Vivian did not thank Madison publicly. Madison did not ask her to. 2 days later, Alexander called Madison from an unknown number. He accused her of choosing Vivian. Madison recorded the call. "I am choosing what happened," she said. Alexander threatened to expose old photographs. Madison released a short statement first, admitting again that she had an affair with a married man, used benefits that were not hers, and assaulted Vivian. The photographs lost their threat. Alexander had nothing left to reveal that Madison had not already owned. For the first time, he could not control either woman's shame. The newest Ashford Hotel opened beside a children's rehabilitation center. It was not the tallest building in the group. It had no presidential suite. The top floor held 12 family apartments, a shared kitchen, a playroom, and a garden protected from cameras. Vivian named it the Eleanor Ashford House. Opening day brought staff, families, doctors, and local residents. 300 folding chairs filled the garden. The number did not frighten Vivian. She stood before the guests wearing her mother's bracelet and a white suit. There was no red mark on her face, no husband beside her, and no mistress in her seat. Nora opened the doors. Lily cut the ribbon. The first families entered. Vivian's speech contained no mention of Alexander. She spoke for 90 seconds about rooms, transport, privacy, and children. Then she handed the microphone to a nurse. During the tour, a reporter asked whether the new hotel was the 11th slap. Vivian stopped. "There were never only 10, the reporter added. "Everything you built afterward made the story bigger." Vivian looked through the glass doors at families entering the apartments. "No," she said. "This is not another slap." She pointed toward the playroom. "This has nothing to do with them." That answer ended the revenge story where it needed to end. Alexander's losses were not the measure of Vivian's future. At sunset, the opening guests left. Staff checked the apartments. A child placed the first drawing on the playroom wall, a tall hotel with yellow windows and people holding hands outside. Vivian pinned it in place. 5 years earlier, Madison had struck her beneath chandeliers because both she and Alexander believed Vivian's restraint meant she could be erased. They were wrong. Vivian's restraint had given her time to see every borrowed key, false title, stolen gift, hidden bill, and empty promise. When she finally answered, she did not answer with one hand. She answered with doors that stopped opening for liars and began opening for families. She answered with jobs protected, money restored, rooms transformed, and a name returned to its true history. She answered until the slap became the least important thing anyone remembered. The garden lights came on. Vivian locked the administration office and walked through the family floor one last time. Behind one door, parents unpacked. Behind another, a child laughed at the view. The shared kitchen smelled of soup. At the exit, Vivian removed her mother's bracelet and placed it inside its case. She no longer needed to wear proof of ownership. Everything around her already knew her name. The final dispute concerned Alexander's shares. He offered them to a rival group on the condition that the buyer challenge Vivian's leadership. The rival announced the deal before checking whether Alexander could transfer the shares freely. He could not. The shares came from Vivian's family rescue of his failed company years earlier. If Alexander sold them outside the family group, Vivian had the first right to buy them back at the original formula. Alexander learned this during a public investor call. He expected to announce a powerful new alliance. Instead, the company secretary read the restriction and confirmed Vivian had already exercised her right. The rival withdrew. Alexander's remaining connection to Ashford Crown Hospitality disappeared with one electronic signature. His name vanished from the shareholder page. He called Vivian immediately. "You took the last thing I had." Vivian stood inside the Eleanor Ashford house while staff prepared the next apartment. "You tried to sell it to hurt the company. It was mine. Then you should have read the agreement." Alexander went silent. Years earlier, he had mocked Vivian for reading every page before signing. He called it unnecessary caution. Now the page he ignored removed his final piece of power. Vivian ended the call and approved a staff scholarship with the recovered shares' first payment. 20 employees entered training the next month. Alexander's last asset inside the group began paying for other people's futures. Madison returned to the Ashford Crown only once. The design studio she worked for won an open contract to renovate a children's activity room. Vivian did not block the bid. The proposal was the strongest, and Madison was not listed as project lead. On installation day, a delivery problem left the team short of workers. Madison arrived carrying boxes. She wore jeans and an old sweater. Hotel staff recognized her. Some stared at the woman who once crossed the ballroom in silver and struck the owner. Madison kept working. She assembled shelves, carried cushions, and attached low hooks for children's coats. She did not enter the owner's elevator. She did not ask for special treatment. At lunch, she sat with the installation crew in the staff cafeteria. Vivian inspected the room that afternoon. Bright colors covered the walls. Storage bins rolled beneath the tables. A quiet corner held soft lamps and books. Madison stood near the door. "The work is complete," she said. Vivian checked every section. "It meets the plan." Madison nodded. No apology was repeated. No friendship was offered. The finished room was accepted because the work was good, not because the past was forgotten. As Madison left, she passed the ballroom doors. They were open for a nurse's dinner. She paused where the slap happened. Then she continued walking. That was her consequence now. Not endless public punishment. The knowledge of what she had done, carried without asking Vivian to make it lighter. Alexander saw Vivian for the last time at Eleanor Ashford's memorial exhibition. The original hotel displayed photographs, letters, keys, uniforms, and construction plans from the group's history. One wall covered the years Alexander worked for the company. His successful projects remained listed. His photograph appeared twice. Vivian had not erased him. She had placed him accurately. Alexander entered near closing time and walked through the exhibition alone. He stopped before a photograph of himself and Vivian opening a resort 10 years earlier. In the image, he held the scissors while Vivian stood slightly behind him. The caption named them both. He found Vivian near the first brass room key. "You kept my photograph. It happened. I expected you to remove me. Records are not revenge." Alexander looked around at Eleanor's history. "I thought all of this became mine because I made it larger. You made parts of it larger." The fair answer surprised him. "Was I ever good at anything?" he asked. Vivian looked at the old resort photograph. "Yes, you were good at making people believe in a project." Hope crossed his face. "Then you started believing every project belonged to you." The hope vanished, but he did not become angry. For once, he accepted the complete sentence. He looked at Vivian's bracelet. "I am sorry about that night." "Which part?" Alexander had no quick answer. Vivian waited. "All of it," he said eventually, "but especially standing between you and what I helped Madison do." It was the closest he came to naming the truth without protecting himself. Vivian nodded once. She did not forgive him aloud. She did not invite another meeting. She walked toward the next group of visitors and began explaining her mother's first hotel key. Alexander left through the public doors. He never contacted her again. On the 10th anniversary of the original gala, 300 guests gathered in the Ashford Crown Ballroom. The number appeared on the seating report. Vivian noticed it and smiled. The event honored hospital workers and the families who had used the residences. Lily, now a teenager, spoke for 2 minutes about returning to school after surgery. Nora announced a new residence in another city. The housekeeper from the first hotel presented a scholarship to a young employee. Vivian sat at the central table. Her mother's bracelet remained in its case at home. She wore no symbol from the night of the slap. At 9, the ballroom screen showed the 10 original consequences, but not as punishments. Access became protected rooms. The bracelet became a family archive. Madison's canceled title became paid staff positions. Recovered expenses became medicine and transport. Alexander's lost stage became a platform for nurses and families. The presidential suite became a residence. The company chair became stable leadership. The divorce became a clear boundary. The messages became proof. The final room transformation became a national program. Guests applauded each result. Vivian watched without seeing Alexander or Madison in the images. The presentation focused on what replaced the harm. When she took the stage, she looked across the same floor where she once stood bleeding into a white napkin. 10 years ago, someone believed one slap could tell this room who mattered, she said. The ballroom became still. It could not. She gestured toward the staff and families. What mattered was what happened next. That was the entire speech. The orchestra began. Dinner continued. Vivian left the stage before applause could turn her into another monument. Near the ballroom entrance, the current creative director showed her the next year's plan. The woman had worked at the hotel for 15 years. Her budget listed every expense clearly. No imported perfume, no private entourage, no stolen seat. Vivian approved it. Later, she walked through the hotel garden with Lily and Nora. Children from the family residence chased lights across the path. Parents drank coffee beneath umbrellas. The Grand's upper windows glowed above them. The hotel no longer carried the tension of Alexander's secrets. It carried people. At the garden gate, Lily asked whether Vivian had ever wanted to slap Madison back. Vivian answered honestly, "For 1 second." "Why didn't you?" Vivian looked toward the ballroom. "Because 1 second was too small for what they had done." Lily considered that, then nodded. They continued walking. Vivian no longer counted victories against Alexander's losses. She counted occupied family rooms, protected jobs, completed treatments, restored buildings, and doors opened for the right people. The night Madison struck her remained part of the hotel's history. It was no longer the title of Vivian's life. The opening of the fifth family residence brought the old video back. A media account posted the 22-second gala clip on the morning of the ceremony with a new caption. Woman builds hotel empire after husband's mistress slaps her. Within an hour, millions of people watched Madison's hand cross the screen again. Reporters waiting outside the new residence stopped asking about rooms and began asking whether Vivian planned to turn her revenge story into a book, a film, or a personal brand. Vivian entered through the front doors without answering. Inside, staff prepared 12 apartments for families arriving from rural hospitals. The kitchen stocked simple meals. The playroom held clean toys. Transport drivers checked routes. None of the work depended on an old video. At noon, the opening broadcast began. The first reporter asked Vivian to describe how the slap changed her. She pointed toward the residence director. Ask her how many families arrived tonight. 12. Another reporter asked whether Alexander had seen the building. Vivian pointed toward the transport manager. Ask him how many hospital rides are scheduled this week. 108. A third asked whether Madison had apologized. Vivian pointed toward the kitchen supervisor. Ask her how many meals this kitchen can prepare. 400 a day. The questions changed. Reporters began filming rooms, drivers, staff, and family supplies. The old clip remained online, but it moved below live footage of the new residence. At 3, the first family arrived. A mother carried a sleeping toddler. A grandfather pulled 2 suitcases. An older sister held a folder of hospital papers against her chest. Staff led them to an apartment overlooking a small garden. The mother recognized Vivian and started to thank her. Vivian stopped her gently and handed her the room card. Rest first. The woman nodded. No camera entered the apartment. Outside, another family arrived, then another. By evening, every room was occupied. The media account that posted the gala clip added a second video. This one showed the residence lights turning on floor by floor. The new caption read, "What she built afterward." Vivian did not share either post. She stood in the garden while children explored the path. The building behind her carried Eleanor Ashford's name in small letters above the entrance. Nothing on the walls mentioned Alexander, Madison, divorce, or 10 slaps. Nora approached with the final occupancy list. All families checked in, no problems. Vivian signed the page. Her phone buzzed with hundreds of new notifications. She switched it off. At sunset, she walked through the residence. A father warmed soup. A nurse delivered medication. Two siblings argued over the top bunk. A little girl placed a drawing beside her bed. The building had become useful within hours. That speed pleased Vivian more than any viral response. Near the exit, the residence director asked whether they should prepare a display about Vivian's story for future donors. No, not even a small one. Vivian looked back at the occupied rooms. Show them this. The director understood. The doors opened as another hospital van arrived with luggage left behind during an emergency transfer. Staff carried the bags upstairs. Vivian stepped outside. The reporters were gone. The garden lights were on. Through the windows, families moved inside rooms that had not existed when Madison raised her hand. One slap had created a headline. Vivian's answer had created keys. The headline would fade. The keys would keep opening doors. The final key was delivered to Vivian a month later. It came from the Ashford Crown's old presidential elevator. During renovation, staff had preserved the brass emergency key Alexander once carried on his personal ring. The hotel manager placed it inside a small box and asked whether Vivian wanted it stored in the company archive. Vivian turned the key over in her palm. Alexander had used it to reach Madison without appearing in the public lobby. He had believed a hidden elevator made a hidden life permanent. After the gala, the lock was replaced. The elevator now served the family residence and opened with blue medical access cards. Melt it, Vivian said. The hotel workshop melted the brass with several outdated room keys. A local artist shaped the metal into a small plaque. No private door is more important than the truth behind it. The plaque was mounted beside the staff training room, not in the lobby. Guests did not photograph it. Reporters never wrote about it. New employees read it during orientation before receiving access cards. On the day it was installed, Vivian attended the training session. 20 new employees learned the hotel's rules: protect guest privacy, question improper access, document pressure, and never assume a powerful name overrules a clear boundary. Afterward, a young receptionist asked Vivian whether refusing an executive could damage her career. Not here, Vivian said. The answer traveled through the room. That evening, Vivian used an ordinary blue card to visit the family residence. A child held the elevator door for her. Parents carried grocery bags inside. Staff moved medicine boxes toward the kitchen. The elevator rose past the ballroom floor. Vivian remembered Alexander standing between her and Madison, certain one threat could send her upstairs in shame. Instead, every floor now carried proof that his threat had failed. The doors opened. Vivian stepped into a hallway full of light, voices, and unlocked possibilities. She no longer remembered the slap as the moment she lost control. It was the moment control stopped belonging to people who misused her patience. Alexander had offered Madison borrowed power. Vivian replaced it with lasting purpose. Long after the ballroom gossip finally faded away, families still slept safely behind the many doors she had opened. The final financial judgment arrived several weeks later. Alexander was ordered to repay every charity expense he had approved for private trips, stolen gifts, and secret rooms. His luxury apartment was sold, his honorary positions were removed, and he was permanently barred from managing hotel or relief funds. Madison returned the money, jewelry, and benefits she had accepted, compensated the assistants she had bullied, and lost the right to hold financial authority inside any Ashford property. Neither could hide behind the other. Alexander answered for betrayal, theft, and abuse of power. Madison answered for violence, cruelty, and knowingly helping him steal. At the next staff meeting, Vivian watched the people they had harmed receive repayment. The waiter whose tray had fallen during the slap was promoted to banquet supervisor. The assistant Madison, once humiliated, became a department manager. The nurses' table received permanent funding without another wasteful gala. Their punishment was not one embarrassing night. It was losing every privilege they had treated as proof that they could hurt others without consequence.